Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sophia Wardell, and today we have a very special guest, romantic comedy author, Elle Whittaker. Elle Whittaker is a hopeless romantic who has been writing poems, scripts, and stories since childhood. She is also a director, actor, and sound designer. Elle is the author of the romantic comedy novel Halfway Across the Street. Thanks for joining us today, Elle.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. And today I want to talk about romantic comedy writing with you. So let's talk a little bit about the enemies to lovers dynamic. How do you balance the initial tension and conflict in the enemies to lovers story while ensuring the chemistry between the characters still feels believable and ultimately romantic?
I think having a misunderstanding is really core to having an enemies to lovers dynamic. They should trigger each other. So if her issue is misogyny, then he has to seem misogynist, or she misunderstands him as being misogynist. And if his issue is snobbishness, then she has to seem snobby.
Right.
But it's always a misunderstanding that the more they get to know each other, the more they understand, oh, you're actually someone I'm fully attracted to.
And I think that's so relatable because we can all relate to somebody, with the first impression that may be bad, that the more we get to know them, we really like them and sometimes end up together with romantically. So,
Exactly.
and I want to talk a little bit now about the small town setting. What tips do you have for creating a small town setting that feels like a character in itself, adding to the charm, but also the tension of the story without overshadowing the romance?
Yeah, I actually have two tips for this. One of them is to create a map. I have like an actual 1 square mile map of the town. So there are locations on the map that are never relevant to the story, but I know they're there. And another helpful exercise, I did this and it actually ended up being a chapter in Halfway to You, where I have a main character just go on a walk through the town. I gave her she's handing out flyers for an event, but it means that instead of just saying oh, there's a grocery store, oh, there's a fishing shop, oh, there's a restaurant, that it's, oh, this is Zhao's Chinese restaurant run by a husband and wife and their other son runs the clinic down the street. And instead of just a grocery store, it's Dorothy's grocery store. And she's been running it for 2 generations. And having your character interact with people specifically will give that small town setting a really authentic feeling.
Right, exactly. I love that. It also plays to the relatability of the story. In terms of character development, how do you approach the character development of the hero, especially when he starts as someone the heroine dislikes, or when the heroine starts as someone the hero dislikes? What steps do you take to reveal the quote unquote good guy beneath the surface without rushing the process?
Yeah, for me, the key is really to know that character really, really well myself, to
Mm,
know why they do the things they do and who they are. So, for instance, in Halfway Across the Street, the character of Tanner grew up in a really abusive household. And it means that he is very aware of danger and very protective.
hmm.
But to our heroine, Maya, his protectiveness comes off as misogynist,
Right.
the sort of oh, you can't take care of yourself thing. But as I smoosh them together, as I force them to work together or get caught in a rainstorm together or end up at the same bar at the same time, it gives them opportunities to get to know each other so that they eventually come to understand, oh, that's why you did that. It's because of this thing.
Right. And on that note, with just kind of the crafting the scenes and the romantic tension, how do you craft these scenes that build romantic tension without feeling forced or cliche?
My belief is to just lean into the cliche. There's a reason that those cliches exist and persist, and especially within the romance genre, there are tropes that readers love and expect. And so I remember when I first started writing romance, I was like, I'm going to be so different and unique and not do any cliches. And the story was awful.
Right.
So when I was like, okay, let me throw everything. Oh, they get to the hotel. There's only one hotel room, which is sort of a version of the just one bed trope.
Right.
And oh, they have to save the family business. No, they were childhood sweethearts. And I just threw a bunch of cliches at it and it worked. So I say to just tune into that inner hopeless romantic. My
Mm,
other belief is to help you take your time. I have a pacing rule that I sort of loosely follow, which is that the first kiss between the characters should take place like 25% into the book, and the first time they get more intimate should be about 50% into the book. So that means that on the way to those things, every interaction, every scene between those characters is a little bit of an escalation, whether physically or emotionally, that they get a little bit closer, but you have to spend half the book building to it until you get to the moment where they come together.
right. I think that's a great way to do it. And just the fact that cliches or tropes, they're relatable and people love them and they live those a lot of times, maybe not as animated or as,
As
as
perfected.
yes, exactly. But that's what they love. And that same story, but with different characters in a different setting, people read it over and over again and they just absolutely love it. So I want to talk a little bit lastly about just the humor and emotion in a romantic comedy. They often require a delicate balance. And how do you incorporate humor into the story while maintaining the stakes, especially when you're dealing with serious themes like a family business on the brink?
For me, a lot of the humor comes from the dialogue, as opposed to situations. There's some authors that are really, really good at writing like funny situations. Like I think of like the Bridget Jones Diary series. Those are really good, like situational comedy, which is
Mhm.
I'm not quite as strong there, but I am great at banter. I can do humor in dialogue. And for me, the other thing that's helpful to remember is that humor is not just jokes. It's also a
Mhm.
coping mechanism for both characters and real life humans, that it's
Right.
also an attitude toward life that helps us keep from like throwing in the towel or giving up. And humor is also a way for characters to connect with each other, that if a character makes a joke and another character doesn't get it, that tells us something about their relationship. Or if a character says something funny and another character really laughs, then that tells us something about that relationship.
Lastly, Elle, where can our listeners find and connect with you?
Yeah, my books Halfway to You and Halfway Across the Street are both available on Amazon and Kindle, as well as bookshop.org if you want to support your local bookstore. You can find me on TikTok and on Instagram at Elle Whittaker Romance. That's ELLEWHITTAKER Romance.
Well, Elle, thank you so much. That was wonderful insight on romantic comedy writing.
You're welcome. It was great to talk to you.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today's interview with romantic comedy author Elle Whittaker. Be sure to check out our website for more videos. Wishing you all a fulfilling and successful writing journey.